There are no words needed for this video, because what I'm about to reveal to you requires just this. Loving awareness. That's it. And that is so hard for the brain to comprehend, how loving, peaceful awareness could change everything. Your higher self has been waiting for you to realize something for a very long time. And that is that you are whole and complete in this moment. And you always were whole and complete in this moment. And that there was never anything that you could do differently as to fix yourself, as to heal yourself. Because you were always whole and complete right now. And that will always be the case for you. You will never not be whole and complete. Which is, of course, something that is incredibly hard to understand, realize, and to allow it to sink in, as you're still identified with the ego, with the mind, and all of the programs and all of the things that so far made you believe otherwise. Because truly you can only ever believe that something needs to be fixed, that something is broken, that something is not as it should be, when you're identified with things of that nature. You are not this body, you are not this mind, you are not your emotions. You are, above all of these things, simply aware of them and continuously giving your power away to this vehicle that you are in awareness of during this lifetime. And this is the source of all of the issues that you're facing in your life. This handing over of power to this thing and not giving the permission to your higher self to shine through you. Because when you allow your higher self to shine through you, everything just works itself out. Everything just starts being absolutely fucking magical. Because your higher self is the highest form of abundance that exists. And when you tap into that and flow with it, as you may have known for a long time, if you're finding my videos here, that who you are is what manifests your reality. And when you are abundance, you are your higher self. Everything of abundance starts showing up in your life, in your relationships, in your success, in your money, in your internal being, in your well-being, health, and so on. It just all starts to change. When you start to become that change of abundance. You can't get it. You must become it in this moment. But the tricky part here, and why I am coming in here today to make this video, is to show you why you were never able to do this before. Why you were not able to tap into the flow of your higher self. Because it's so easy for that to happen when we have an ego that tries to steal the show and tries to take control at all times. Then it's so easy to just fall back into those old patterns, into those old way of doing things that made us create a certain type of reality to begin with. That was that of challenge, poor health, worrying, overthinking, and so on. All of that originates from the ego trying at all times to take control. But then it's important to ask yourself, why is the ego doing it? Because it's not inherently evil. It is just misunderstood. The only thing that the ego actually wants is your loving attention. Because the ego is always trying to prove itself, always trying to prove that it's good enough, always trying to prove that it can be accepted. And it comes out in a million different ways that creates challenge and disorder within our internal state that makes us feel not fulfilled, not satisfied, always looking to get more. Because we're allowing the ego to run the show. And the ego is running the show because it feels unloved. You see, when the ego starts doing things, starts taking a lot of action, starts to be very caught up in overthinking and stuff like that, What it is truly seeking is just the peace of loving awareness, of just being with it as it is, because it was always whole and complete, and the belief that it was not whole and complete as it is led it to suppress a lot of energy within our body, and then create all of these things and mechanisms that the ego does, as it is trying to become whole and complete, because it has failed to realize that it is already whole and complete. And this happens, of course, from all the experiences that we've had in our lives, different lifetimes, generational, and so on. There's a lot of this suppressed energy that is later reflected in the ego. And we're always in touch with this energetic world internally within ourselves, except that a lot of us are numb to it, don't understand that it's happening, because it's unconscious to us. But the more that we can start to understand who it is that we have been now for a long period of time in our life. I've been this person that always occupied myself and sought distractions by trying to be the best, perhaps, or trying to do this or that. Not saying that inherently it's something bad with trying to be the best in something, but sometimes it originates not out of that of self-love, but trying to prove that you are loved. In which case you're going to suffer from whatever it is that you're doing in your life. And when this is the case, and you have these patterns in your life where you sought out addictions, you sought out to be occupied at all times by scrolling your phone or whatever it has been, to now start to become aware of the fact that it always happened. Because I was identifying with an energy, an emotion inside of me, and reacting to it through the ego, through a mechanism of thinking or taking action or so on. And it only ever happened because I wasn't yet self-realized. I didn't realize that, oh, this is not me. I'm simply aware of these things. In this split second of a realization, you're instantly connected to your higher self, which is the awareness that you are. That's your higher self. And when you take charge again, by not allowing the ego to run to a program, to distract itself, to try and achieve, accomplish, or whatever it is that it's been trying to do, which is what sends us back into those repetitive loops where things don't turn out in the way that we want. To understand that the ego was always doing it because it was looking for love and attention. And the highest form of love and attention that you can give to your ego is that of acceptance and radical, just validation, which happens through present loving awareness without allowing the ego to do something. Which of course is extremely hard in the beginning because you're so used to always coping with this internal world by doing something with the ego. That's the creation of the ego, how it starts to run the show. Because it deems, or you deem, something internally within yourself to not be as it should. And I have to fucking change this. Because only if I receive this thing, get this thing, do this thing, will a change occur that, unconsciously of course, you need, because it's gonna make you feel whole, loved and accepted. Because we all live in existential pain as long as the ego is running the show, because the ego is only ever running the show because it feels like it is not loved. And your true essence, your higher self, who you are beyond the body, the mind and the emotions and everything, is that of pure love. And the only way to actually merge the ego into the higher self, its presence, and to become your higher self, and also have a healthy ego that is not running the show but being a loyal follower of your higher self and what the higher self wants to do, you need to take care of the ego first and make it find peace, which is only ever going to happen when you give it what it needs, which is unconditional love, which appears in the form of total still awareness of it. When you can sit still with your ego in loving awareness and allow it to be exactly as it is without reacting to it anymore, which becomes a whole lot easier when you realize that, oh, I'm not the ego. Because when you are imagining that you are the ego, one of the things that you usually feel is hopelessness. You feel hopeless. And that's of course natural, because the ego can't change what's being felt, even though it's always trying to. And of course it feels hopeless, because it is hopeless to do such a thing. But that's when you realize that I'm not the ego trying to change the internal world. I'm actually a higher thing, a much broader and bigger thing. And through the awareness of the ego and allowing it and these emotions to exist as they are, instead of living reactively in combination and using your awareness to think that I am this or I am this because this has to change, to realize that in recognizing that you are whole and complete in this moment, the ego doesn't have to fight anymore. And the reason that the ego is fighting is because this is not supposed to rise up to the surface. Because when these emotions starts to become aware to you again, the existential pain of the ego becomes too much, and it's too much in danger, because this means that it's unloved. But when this one and this emotion are both being observed with loving awareness, then this one gets the need that it was always looking for, that it was always looking to get, which is just that of existing as it is. Because when it exists as it is and it is allowed to by you, disidentifying from it and observing it, then this energy starts to move into awareness, and it starts flowing again. It starts integrating again into your whole being, not suppressed in a small point in your stomach or in one of your chakras anymore, where it just creates illness and disease and stress and problems. It starts to flow again, starts to become a part of you, starts to move through you even, starts to get released, starts to be a part of you. And in that, the ego doesn't need to do its things anymore. And it can become now a follower of your higher self instead, which is always what it is that we're looking for, to just be our authentic selves, our higher selves. That's how we start out in this world. As kids, full and bubbling of life, just doing anything, believing, dreaming, and then eventually the ego starts to create itself a little bit more as it deems more and more things not acceptable. If I have this thing, I'm not whole and complete. Push it down. If I have this thing, I'm not whole and complete. Push it down. And every time something gets pushed down by not being accepted by the ego also raises itself up. More mental health issues starts to occur, more mental problems starts to happen in your life, because it just starts rising, increasing in the control that it has. And the only way that we can actually suppress these emotions is as long as the ego is allowed to completely and always be distracted, because it is only able to push down the emotions by being distracted. So as long as this one is keeping up its distractions, which is those of the thoughts, of the actions that we're taking, and the addictions, as long as it's allowed to do those things, it is always perpetually trying to prove itself worthy, whole, and complete. And this is where our issues are coming in. If you allow the ego to just be in awareness, you're giving it the highest form of unconditional love, which is to exist as it is. And then as it exists as it is, it also starts to become present with the energy from here. And then the ego doesn't have to be reactive to it anymore. And then it all dissolves. That part of your ego that was looking for or chasing a relationship, it dissolves. That part of you that was chasing success or always being extremely critical over yourself, it dissolves. The part of you that was always overthinking or being insecure, it dissolves. Because that part of you only ever existed because the ego didn't feel loved. And the only way to give that love to the ego is through your loving awareness. Because in that awareness, as I've said now, it is finally allowed to exist as it is, as if it was already whole and complete. Then it dissolves. Because it was only ever here as to protect you, to protect this being from the danger of not being accepted. And it feels like it's not accepted when it's not loved. And so the only way to give that love back to you is not through a relationship or through another person or through the accomplishment of something, but through the present awareness of your higher self, which require no method, which requires no doing other than being here, realizing where it was that you've been distracting yourself in your life so far, and instead do the hard thing now and just allow yourself to sit in present awareness. And this is going to, over time, dissolve everything that's made your life challenging. Because every challenge arises from the ego. Sure, things can be challenging, even operating from the heart. But at least in that place, we're not suffering from it, because we're in acceptance of it. And as I started this video, of course, there's not really any words needed for what it is that we're searching for. All that's really needed is our awareness. Here and now. This day, the next day, and the day after that. Until the ego finally starts to feel loved again. That little inner child of yours. And then you'll be free to manifest and create the things that you also want in your life. And it's gonna be amazing. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you in the next one.